Grand Rising. Loud. Here we go. Good morning, everyone. My name is Reverend Alice Reed, and I'm Spiritual Director for Centers for Spiritual Living, Capistrano Valley, who happens to be meeting at the Baha'i Center in San Clemente. Yeah. Yes. And I want to just say we're 2 months into this. 2 months now we have been meeting here, and it has been delightful. It has really been delightful to be here. But a beautiful facility and owned by beautiful individuals that have just been so welcoming and accommodating. Does feel a little homey, doesn't it? Yes, yes. So thank you so much, Baha'i community, for making a place for us. Our annual theme this year is Rising Higher, Growing Deeper, and in our Science of Mind magazine, which you can find in the lobby, each month when we cover a different theme, it's also covered in all the articles and the reading, and so I encourage you to pick up your copy it's for 2 months. It's July on one side, August on the other. So I encourage you to pick one up. Not only do you get to stay in touch with what we're talking about during the month, but you also get to support the Science of Mind magazine, which is just a year shy of being 100 years old. Wow. Yeah. This publication has been around since 1926, and we are, with all print. Have you noticed the magazines are thinner? There's less of them out there. Print is not as popular as it's been in the past. So we want to support the Science of Mind magazine, and I encourage you to get a copy and support the. I have one more thing to say. Apparently I had a lot to say about the magazine this morning. I didn't need any prompting, Kathy. The other thing to know about the Science of Mind magazine is that we have 17,000 subscribers, and this magazine meets people who will never step foot in a center. So it is this philosophy that is in print and reaching many people. So another reason to support it. So it is 5 Sundays, and thanks to the Baha'i Soul Journey, we only had to speak for 4 of them on this beautiful topic of looking at in living color. In living color. And so all month we've been honoring diversity. We've been honoring Pride Month, Juneteenth, and knowing oneness at the same time. So I tried to talk about diversity and oneness because on the face of things, they can look very different. You could be, I can't tell you how many times I've heard in class, well, how can we celebrate diversity and still be one? Well, oneness is one of our core principles. And it's also a core principle for the Baha'i community, so I know there's a lot of resonance there. And yet, we honor and celebrate diversity. We honor and celebrate. Let me just put it this way. Spirit emanates in billions of different expressions. And so that's why we can know that spirit in its oneness, in the infinite reality of creation, gives free-flowing ability for life to express itself in so many different ways, in so many beautiful ways. And sometimes we tend to lean towards or hold dear a sense of belonging, wanting to feel like we're part of, but it doesn't have to be at the expense of our authenticity. It doesn't have to be at the expense of our individuality. I was thinking about this morning, like God is queer. God is straight. God is white. God is black. God is male. God is female. God is non-binary. God is everything, and if you are expressing it, it's God, right? And yet, sometimes in our need to feel, maybe it's a sense of security, maybe we're needing to feel like we're afraid of something, we're afraid of things that are different. Sometimes we tend to push away those things that we're not familiar with. And so all month we've been looking at this beautiful idea of unity is not the same as uniformity, right? And certainly as we have evolved as a species, if you will, we have begun to see and appreciate all the different ways that God expresses itself in form, in the form of individuals. And certainly we aspire to be God as its perfected expression. And in owning our own expression, we sometimes create a sense of separation or isolation. I don't think we do it on purpose. It just happens when we get so wrapped up in, and it comes from a place of wanting to be seen and heard exactly as we are. And sometimes when we get too invested in that, we can get a little bit of tunnel vision, and we tend to create a little bit of separateness. But that's just the pathway to a greater sense of oneness as we begin to recognize and own our own individual, authentic expression as God. When we begin to really own that, it no longer becomes ultra important for me to let you know that I am a cisgender white woman. I don't need to make sure you know that anymore. I can just be who I am. And I see that happening in other people who are really owning who they are and standing in their truth. And it's a beautiful thing. And yet sometimes when we see diversity in this light of not quite owning it or not feeling like we belong, or I was reading in the Science of Mind magazine, the daily reading today, Dr. Raymond Anderson talked about walking into a room and not feeling like you were welcome. Anybody have that experience ever? I have had it as a woman who carried too much weight. I have had it as a woman who is of a certain age. And I know that feeling where I don't quite feel like I belong. But honestly, I'm the one who's responsible for that. I'm the one who has to look at what I'm carrying into the room. And yet we project, right? Projection is this term. Carl Jung talked about it. I think he's the one that really made it popular, and we talk about it from a spiritual sense. Certainly in the recovery movement, we talk about projection. And projection is that thing where things that we don't understand or realize that we're carrying, we project out into the world around us until we can begin to have a heightened awareness of who we are and what we're bringing into the room. And sometimes we're superimposing our own ideas of right and wrong or normal or different. And so projection it's an interesting phenomena because oftentimes the individual who's projecting doesn't even realize they're projecting. They're taking a stand, they're making a point, they're trying to get something just right. But when we are projecting, oftentimes it's a lost part of ourselves that we need to come to terms with. I have told this story before, and I wasn't planning on telling it this morning, but here it comes. There was a friend of mine who talked about an experience she had watching Howard Stern. Anybody familiar with Howard Stern? Yeah, he's a little crusty and raunchy, and there was a particular episode where he had a laser pointer, and there was had a buddy in the room with him, and there was this beautiful bathing suit model, and they were using the laser pointer to point out all her faults. And my friend Lori got really upset about it, and she carried it around for days until one day she found herself looking in the mirror pointing out all her individual faults. And suddenly it landed. She knew why she was holding on to it. She knew why she was attached to it. She was projecting her own lack of self-love onto what she witnessed on that television show. And it can be that subtle sometimes when we are projecting what it is that something in ourselves that is disowned at the moment. What we want to do is express. it's the same mechanical process, if you will. The mechanics are the same. Something in us is being expressed. The creative life force is expressing by means of us. With projection, it's an unconscious process. And when we step into conscious expression, well, then we're able to own who we are. We're able to own what we're expressing. We're able to really know who we are as we express our own individual nature, or maybe I'm expressing the things that are similar to you. Whatever it happens to be, when we're conscious of it, it's expression. And, I want to say, I project sometimes. Sometimes I catch myself in projecting. I've had 2 episodes, just 2, only 2. Experiences with projecting this week. The first happened with this equipment lease that we had. We thought it was going to be taken over by the new owner of the building we just sold, and it turned out we had to keep the piece of equipment, and I didn't want anything with that. I was fighting it, tooth and nail. I did not want to accept this. And the thing that happens with me when I am projecting, I made the leaseholder, I villainized them. Like, that damn lease company, corporate greed. Look at that corporate greed out there. They make this lease that isn't friendly to us. And well, there might be some truth to that. It was the energy that I was carrying behind that. That was the thing I had to pay attention to. And the thing that happens to me when I project like that is I overcomplicate things. And I try to manipulate situations and circumstances. Anybody know what I'm talking about? Yeah, and I'm uncomfortable, and things aren't working the way I'd hoped they worked. And at the end of the day, I still have to accept it. There's this great quote. I think I used the full quote earlier in this month, and I'm bringing it back. Ernest Holmes, who's the founder of Centers for Spiritual Living, also known as Science of the Mind, wrote in his book, Anatomy of Healing Prayer, everything that is of the nature of limitation is but the limitless flow through us at the level of our acceptance of life. You hear what I'm saying? There's no limitation. The limitation is our experience of not accepting something. The limitless flow, it's sort of like if you think about plugging in a piece of equipment, but for some reason, all the charge isn't going through. And the equipment isn't working at full capacity. That's what we do when we have this experience of resistance, when we experience the world of limitation. We are not experiencing the infinite in its limitless expression. Now, that doesn't mean that when something happens that maybe somebody's doing harm, or perhaps there's some place where your values aren't being met, that doesn't mean that you can't have a moment of, well, holy hell no. You're welcome to do that. But it is the energy that we bring behind that we have to pay attention to. It's the attachment we have to pay attention to. Because if I'm really attached to something, like just close your fists for a minute, right? You're attached to something, right? There's no energy flow. Now let your fists go and feel the flow. Energy requires openness to flow through you. The infinite requires you to be open and available to what wants to move through you. I know when I'm projecting. Sometimes I project a little bit too much, and when life gets just really contracted, that's my hint that I need to step back and look at the bigger picture. But it's hard, right? When there's something you really want, there's something that you really believe should happen, it's hard to step back and get to a place of acceptance and willingness even to accept what's coming forth. The rest of this quote, I'll read the first part again, and then I'm going to read the rest of it, where Holmes writes, "Everything that is of the nature of limitation is but the limitless flowing through us at the level of our acceptance of life. Therefore, we are not fighting the evil with the good. We are not combating hate with love, nor fear with faith. This is not a process of healing, but a revelation of the healed, the whole, the complete, and the perfect. We are merely establishing at a higher level the action of that which is eternal and perfect." So it's a call to us. It's a call to us to grow. It's a call to us to expand. It's a call for us to be willing to see things a little differently, to even expand our level of acceptance. I heard this really sweet story that demonstrates this idea, and so I want to share it with you. There was a party that was being held at a school for children with special needs. And one of the fathers stood up to speak. After thanking the staff who worked with such devotion, he paused and shared a reflection. When nothing disturbs the balance of nature, the natural order reveals itself in perfect harmony. He went on to say, "But my son Herbert doesn't learn like other children. He doesn't understand like they do. So tell me, where is the natural order in his life?" The room fell completely silent. And then he continued, "I believe that when a child like Herbert is born with a physical or cognitive disability, the world is given a rare and sacred opportunity to reveal the very core of the human spirit. And that spirit is revealed not through our idea of perceived perfection, but in how we treat those who need us most." He shared a moment he would never forget. One afternoon, he and Herbert were walking past a field where some boys were playing soccer. Herbert looked up and said, "Dad, do you think they'll let me play?" The father's heart sank. He knew the answer was likely no, but he also knew if they said yes, it would give his son something far more valuable than playing a sport. It would give him a sense of belonging. So he gently approached one of the boys and asked, "Would it be okay if Herbert joined the game?" The boy looked over at his teammates and hesitated and then smiled. "We're losing 3-0 and there's 10 minutes left. Sure, let him take a penalty shot if one arises." Herbert lit up. He ran to the bench and he put on a jersey that nearly swallowed him whole and beamed with pride. His father stood at the sidelines, tears in his eyes. Herbert didn't play much. He just stood nearby watching, but something in the boys shifted. They began to see him not as a distraction, but as one of them. And then in the final minute, a miracle happened. Herbert's team was awarded a penalty kick. The same boy turned to the father and gave a knowing nod. "It's his shot." Herbert walked slowly to the ball, nervous but radiant. The goalkeeper caught on. He made a show of diving to the side, giving the boy a clear shot. Herbert nudged the ball gently forward, and it rolled across the goal line. The boys erupted in cheers. They hoisted Herbert up into the air like he'd won the World Cup. They didn't just let him play, they let him belong. The father closed his speech with tears falling freely. That day, a group of boys made a decision not to win, but to be human, to show the world that kindness, dignity, and love really do exist, and this is what they look like. He went on to say that Herbert passed that winter, but that he reveled in that sense of belonging, and it was a real gift to his son. And I love this story because it demonstrates the power of kindness when we're not so wrapped up in what we think we have to get. right? We're so trained to, get to that goal, that thing that has to happen, that winning that we have to do, that objective, that we lose sight of the power of the journey in whatever we're trying to do. What I know is that this business of oneness is more of an art than a science. It's about checking in with ourselves. It's about noticing those places where we get too attached. It's about recognizing our judgments and maybe coming to a place of discernment. It's about recognizing the opportunity for revelation of healing as opposed to trying to heal something and fix it. Yeah. Being alive, being human, is a great adventure and an opportunity for us when we choose to be conscious, when we choose to be aware, when we choose to remember who we are and whose we are, that we can do this thing called loving each other. And loving each other doesn't always look like just giving somebody a pass. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about loving you enough to be honest with you, loving you enough to share my pain and my joy, loving you enough to share my discomfort and my conflicts as well as the things that are working. This amazing philosophy that we're engaged in is an opportunity for us to express God in diverse ways, in ways that are obvious, like, oftentimes we think of spirituality as that, we're going to be good people. Well, yeah, I think it's more important that we're authentic people, because when we're authentic, we're speaking truth. We're speaking our own truth, and we're recognizing your truth, and somewhere in the middle, this glorious thing called community comes forward, and we're able to make our little piece of the world a truly honest and beautiful place. Holmes reminds us in that beautiful quote, the limitless is flowing through us at the level of our acceptance of life and being willing to expand our acceptance. So that's my invitation to you this week. Can you look at the places where you can expand your acceptance, not to acquiesce to something and just step aside, but to really accept it for what it is, so that something greater, some revelation, if you will, can be revealed to you, so that you can be part of this beautiful expression of God that shows up in so many different ways, all of them being equal in their own right. Thank you very much. Okay, so let's end our time together with affirmative prayer. And so I invite you to lower your gaze or close your eyes as I speak this prayer, this affirmative prayer, knowing that the infinite is infinite. That creativity flows through us to experience itself as creativity. Love flows through us to experience itself as love. Joy flows through us to experience itself as joy. There is an infinite way that the Creator can express itself. And I know for each one of us that we are living proof of the Creator and its creation. Living proof of the infinite ways and possibilities that Spirit can show up. And so I trust as we move through our week, we remember this, that any place we find ourselves not feeling like we understand what we're experiencing, any place we find where we're othering, let us remember that this too is God's expression. And let us hold on to our own authentic expression while honoring the expression before us, so that we can express as opposed to projecting, owning all that we are, knowing that it is all God moving through us. And in this now moment, we can surrender and accept what it is that wants to be experienced. And we can be willing to expand this idea of accepting life, loving life, and being part of this beautiful formula of creation. So I surrender this word, knowing this highest possibility, not only for those of us that are in the room, not only for those of us that practice oneness, but for our whole species, for our planet. That there is a greater good that wants to be known. And so we anchor and surrender this, knowing this truth, letting it go. And together we say, and so it is.